Hello friends, how's it going? It's me, Betty Jean. For today's video, I thought it would be fun to kind of go back down memory lane and maybe chat about some of the palettes that I've decluttered in the past and maybe just see if I regret any, if I've completely forgotten any of their existence, and I don't know, I like strolling down memory lane and reflecting on old makeup releases because I feel like the makeup game was so different years ago. Like there are so many new releases nowadays, it's hard to keep up. But back then when something released, it was usually, I don't know, like brands release things maybe a couple times a year rather than a couple times a month, and it was just different. And I'm very curious what I decluttered back in the day and what I felt like I didn't need anymore, maybe what I enjoy it now, do I regret it? I just think it'd be fun. And it'd be fun to hear your thoughts as well on maybe some of these older palettes. Before we hop into it, I did of course film this look. It should already be up on my channel by the time this video goes up. It's part of my 3 looks video with the Odin's Eye Legendary Diversa collection. And then let me just give you my details. These earrings are from Undoubtedly Mad on Etsy. This choker was a gift, so I'm not positive where it's from. This hat is old. I think it's from either Target or Amazon. I'm not positive. And I just got this shirt recently from TeePublic. Anyways, I think I've said it all. Let's just hop into it. I don't think I'm gonna go over all of the palettes I've ever decluttered. I'm just gonna start kind of the farthest back of a declutter video I've ever done and just kind of work my way forward. If you end up liking this video, maybe I can do a part 2 where I just continue on with the series. So just let me know what you think. Let's hop in and chat about some old palettes. Okay, so this one is from 2018, so taking it back a few years. This video is not even public on my channel anymore. I privated a lot of my older videos that I just felt like were kind of cringy, you know? Not everything needs to stay public forever. Oh my gosh, the ABH World Traveler palette. What does that one even look like? I feel like I vaguely remember. Let me scooch over so I can insert pictures so we can look together. I held on to this one for a while. I know that for a fact because it was a limited edition thing and I felt like if I bought something limited edition, I had to keep it for the rest of my life. Okay, I do remember this one. This does not make me excited now. This is very much just that like typical 2017, 2018 neutral palette with a pop of blue. It does have a pop of purple as well. The tones in here are cute. I see why I liked it back then, but I can also totally see why I decluttered it at a point. There's definitely nothing that revolutionary about this one anymore, and I totally forgot about it. So this definitely wasn't a very memorable one, so yeah. I'm just gonna keep going down my list here. Next we have Modern Renaissance. I had this for quite a few years. One of my best friends, Christy, actually gifted it to me for my birthday in like probably 2017. I loved it for such a long time. I ended up just decluttering it at a point just because these warm leaning neutral palettes aren't my like major thing anymore, and it's still not. Sometimes I wish I still had this one just because it was such a cult classic. I know people in real life that still love and use this palette constantly. It's just not really my thing anymore. I loved it at the time though. Like for a couple years, this was one of my favorite palettes. I got so much use out of it. Those shadows had so many dents, so I definitely got some love out of that one. And the final ABH one, the controversial palette, the Subculture palette. I got mine right away. I bought it when it released and I loved mine. I was one of the people that did not have any issues. I honestly couldn't understand why people were having issues. Obviously the biggest thing people said were that there were inconsistencies with the palettes, and that's why there were some people that had a really good time with it and some people that had an absolutely horrible time. I felt like it performed just like my Modern Renaissance palette. I love these colors, I love these grungy tones. I'm pretty sure this is the ABH palette I held onto the longest. I think I kept it for another couple years. I ended up decluttering this one mostly just because I really wasn't getting use out of it anymore. I was using really everything else. I never felt the urge to pick this one up, so I ended up giving it to a friend after many a year. I think I decluttered it last year actually, and I don't regret it. It's still a very cool color story. I feel like it was a way ahead of its time too. I think if this one would have come out a couple years later, people would have vibed with it a lot more, because some people were really weirded out by this color story, but I loved it. I've loved grungy colors for a very long time. I thought this one was a lot of fun, but alas, I do not have it anymore. Oh wait, I lied. There's one more ABH palette. The Prism palette. I literally forgot this one existed. My goodness. I feel like this probably was also a little ahead of its time. I think that people probably would have gotten along better with this one if it, again, released a couple years later, because this was a little bit of like a chaotic color story for the time, and I mean chaotic in a good way. I really like kind of weird out there color stories. I think it's fun. Obviously I don't have it anymore and I've kind of forgotten about it at this point, but I think it's a fun color story. Doesn't exist anymore. I'm pretty sure it was limited edition. But again, I do feel like this one would have had more hype had it released a little bit later. I also remember not having any issues with this palette. I thought it performed fine. I definitely did not get as much use out of this one as I did my Subculture, but I did really like this one. I thought it was cute. Ooh, getting into some old Too Faced. I have not used a Too Faced eyeshadow palette in many a year. This is the Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons palette. Is this one even existing anymore? I'm pretty sure this does not exist anymore. This was, I'm pretty sure, the first Too Faced palette I ever bought myself, and I thought it was so exciting. I was like, look at me go, walking into Sephora. This was like towards the beginning of my makeup journey. I thought it was so cool, like, let me spend $50 on an eyeshadow palette, get myself a Too Faced palette. It did smell like chocolate. It's just fine. As you can see, like, so many of these shadows look very similar to each other. I feel like this palette could have been cut in half and it would have been the exact same color story. As much as I was excited to get it when I got it, I very quickly realized that I was not getting the use out of it that I thought I would. I feel like this one kind of got pushed to the side a lot. This one was like, I kind of regret buying this one, I think, looking back. Like, it really doesn't matter now. It's been years and I forgot about it, but looking back and reflecting, that's one I probably could have just not bought and my life would have been the exact same. What is the Too Faced Sugar Pop palette? What is this? Let me see. Oh, this was when they had like a lot of those mini palettes. I thought these were really cute. I think they still come out with these mini palettes on occasion. Too Faced isn't really a brand I shop from now. But back in the day, I thought this was a really cute idea. I did get use out of these little palettes. I thought they were fun to use. They were just easy to just like open, do a quick look. I liked this one because in my mind and for the time, this was very colorful, which now looking back, it's not really that colorful. It just has like a couple pops of color. But at the time, there were not a lot of colorful things and I didn't really know about indie makeup back then. So this was a really exciting one for the time, and I do remember using it quite a bit. I think I even used those big highlighty shades on the left as base highlights a lot. This one I enjoyed for a while. Forgot about it now. Literally, if you would have told me to color in a picture of what I thought the Sugar Pop palette would have looked like, I probably wouldn't have done this because I totally forgot about what it was. Last Too Faced one, the Cat Eyes palette. I'm fairly certain this one was also a tiny palette. Yes, I was right. This one's okay. Again, I got used out of it back in the day. I did enjoy this one. I think I used the Sugar Pop one more because I've always been into colorful makeup. This one's okay though. It's a little bit more of like a moody, cool toned neutral with a couple pops of color. I think it's kind of cute. Nothing revolutionary now by any means, but I did think it was cute at the time. Again, I kind of forgot about this one. But this was a really fun one at the time. I really liked collecting those teeny palettes. I think I only had like 2 or 3 of them total, but I enjoyed the ones that I had. Oh my gosh, the Makeup Geek Manny MUA palette. Oh my gosh. I was so pumped for this release because again, this was like 2017, 2018 YouTube days. Everyone was doing like a warm toned copper smoky eye with like a pop of blue sometimes. Manny MUA and Jaclyn Hill and that whole crowd were like the peak of makeup YouTube, and I was so pumped about this. I was collecting Makeup Geek shadows at this time, and I was so excited for their first like palette, you know, because they didn't really do palettes, they did singles. I was a little dumb buying this because I already owned a few of the shadows that exist in this palette because this palette consisted of like some already made shades and then some original shades for the palette. So I already had like I think 2 or 3 of them, but I was just really excited to buy it. I'm pretty certain that this was my first like influencer palette I ever bought because I don't think the Jaclyn Hill one was out at that point. I love that one of the shadows was named Sora because I'm a huge Kingdom Hearts fan, and I loved that red shadow, even though I know for a fact that is not the best red shadow to ever exist on this planet. It was definitely the driest of all the shadows in this palette, but reds have always been difficult to create from what I understand, especially back then. They weren't great. And that bluish brownish duochrome was iconic back in the day. That's something that is fairly often seen. If anything, that's kind of like a basic choice now, but this was such a cool palette for the time in my little brain. The Colourpop Dream Street palette. This one is so cute. I actually referenced this one recently in my video where I played with the new, what was it called? What was it called? The Your Golden palette, right here. I mentioned that the Dream Street was basically this, but condensed. But the Dream Street doesn't exist anymore anyways, but very similar to this one. Yeah, I loved this palette for a very long time. It was one of my absolute favorite palettes. I ended up decluttering it after a few years just because I wasn't really getting the use out of it anymore that I once was. But I loved this one. This was actually like one of the first videos I ever uploaded, like my first impressions with this, to get like better views than I normally got, which they were not good views back then. Like I'm pretty sure it only got like a few hundred, but back then I got like less than 100 views per video. So I was like, oh my gosh, this video did so well. How exciting. And this one I just have like fond memories of. Some of the shimmers in there were really pretty, very shifty and cute, but at the end of the day it was mostly neutrals with a couple pops of color, and I just wasn't really feeling that anymore. I don't regret not having this one anymore, but I can look back on it with just like happy memories. This one was a fun one. So it's quite possible that was the first like influencer thing I ever bought, but I'm pretty sure the Manny one came first. The Colourpop Yes Please palette, that was the first palette they ever released. That was like an actual palette and not singles, I'm pretty sure. I love this one. This was also one of my favorite palettes for a very long time. I don't think this one exists anymore, but I loved this one. I thought it was so cool. This was when I discovered my love for yellow eyeshadow, which is still one of my favorite shadows to play with. I thought this one could get so grungy and yellowy with the warm browns and the yellow. Looking at it now, I don't see this and think like, ah yes, a grungy yellow palette. But back in 2017, 2018 era, that is exactly how I saw this palette, and I got so much use out of it. It was so beat up, so dirty because of that white packaging. I decluttered it again just because it's a little not what I'm into anymore. Like, I need more to it. It's a little just too light and basic for me, but I got a lot of use out of this one. This one was a very fond love. What is the Colourpop Semi-Precious palette? What is that? I don't remember that one. Ah, I do remember this one. This one was awful. I hated this palette. The shimmers were so lackluster. They barely even looked like a shimmer. It was almost like a glorified satin at best. Very sheer, very not impressive at all. I'm pretty sure I decluttered this one within a year of getting it. I was not pleased with this one. I'm happy that it was very affordable, but I was not pleased with this palette. I regret buying that one, even though again, it doesn't matter now. It's been years. But if I could do it all over again, I would not have bought that palette. Ooh, let's get into some Urban Decay. The Urban Decay Electric palette. I did end up decluttering that one. I've talked about this before on my channel, sometimes talking about just like old makeup that I used to like and stuff like that. This was actually the first high-end eyeshadow palette I ever bought. One of the first eyeshadow palettes I ever bought. It was one of my absolute favorites for a very long time. But as I progressed in my makeup journey and tried more things, I realized I just didn't love the formula in this palette. It wasn't really what I needed it to be. It could be a little bit chalky and hard to blend. It didn't pack enough of a punch for me. It was just okay. Like, I feel like it was great at the time, very ahead of its time as well, because especially in high end, they did not come out with a lot of bright palettes. I loved it. I got a lot of love out of this one, but eventually I just decided it wasn't for me. I actually did hold on to this for like 2 years after I decluttered it. I just kept it like stored away in a closet because I felt too guilty to like actually give it away or dispose of it at that point because it was very, very old. Since it was my first palette, but I'm pretty sure I officially like decluttered it when I was packing for my move into this house many months ago. But yeah, fond memories. I loved this palette at the time, but it just became not my favorite anymore when I discovered better formulas. The Urban Decay Naked 3. One of my best friends, Mackenzie, actually gave it to me because she bought it for herself and then she just realized she didn't really like these tones on her personally, so she gave it to me in exchange to do her highlights while I was in hair school. I loved this at the time. I was so pumped. This was right after I got myself the Urban Decay Electric, so I just thought I was living large. I had my Urban Decay Electric palette and my Naked 3. I thought I was so cool. I had some of the best makeup out there. I got a lot of use out of this one as well. It was my go-to for neutrals for a very long time. But alas, eventually I discovered other things and realized this formula was not my favorite. This palette in general was not my favorite. It was also getting very beat up because I did use it for a very long time. So it's no longer with me, but it still exists, I'm pretty sure. So if you are someone who still wants the Naked 3, it exists in the world. But there are better options for way more affordable. Ah, the Naked Smokey palettes. I vaguely remember this day. I lived in an apartment literally next to our mall, and I waited until release day. I was off that day. I did not work that day, so I walked into Sephora in my mall right next door and I bought that palette and came home and immediately filmed with it. I thought I was so cool buying another Naked palette, collecting some Urban Decay. For a while, like at the beginning of my makeup journey, Urban Decay was my favorite brand. It was like the only makeup I would buy. I only wanted their concealer and their primer and their blush and stuff like that. That's all I wanted to use. It's so funny how like warped I used to get. Like I would zero in on one brand and I wanted everything from one brand. But that's how like the old YouTube days like influenced me, because all these creators had everything ever from every brand, and me not really realizing that most of their stuff was for free anyways because it was PR. I thought I just had to save all my money and buy everything and collect everything. I'm glad I broke out of that. But this one was only okay. It didn't wow me as much as the Naked 3 did at the time. It was fine. I got some use out of it, but I did realize more quickly that this one just wasn't really up to par of what I was expecting. It just didn't get as deep as I wanted, and it didn't blend as nice as I wanted, and the shimmers were only okay. It was just a fine palette. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great. And now the Naked Heat. I walked my butt to the mall again that day that it released. This one actually was really good. The formula was really nice. It built up really nicely. It could get really deep. I mean, it's probably not the best thing ever now, and I'm sure the shimmers are very like soft and not super metallic, because that's just how Urban Decay shimmers typically are. But I loved this one for a while. I did end up decluttering this one and giving it to a friend because I'm just not super into these warm tone neutrals anymore. It's not really my thing. If I'm gonna play with warm tones like this, I want it to be like red. Like I want it to be very vibrant and fiery. I mean, I'll play with warm tone neutrals sometimes, but I still want it to be more deep and rich. And this one was just more on that like basic warm tone neutral, couple pops of red-ish, but not really like colorful. So this just didn't really suit my makeup preferences anymore, but this was quite a nice palette. I enjoyed it for a while. Ooh, let's get into some old KVD. This is the Metal Matte palette. Zane actually got this for me as a gift because I wanted it really bad, so he ordered it for me, and I did not get nearly as much use out of this one as I thought I was going to. I thought I needed this palette. I thought it was so revolutionary having all the mattes on the bottom and then all the matching shimmers on the top. I thought the different pan sizes were super cool. I just thought this was such an innovative palette. It seemed so bright and colorful, which looking at it now, it's not really that colorful. It's kind of like muted colorful, but not like in a grungy way either. It's just kind of like toned down a little bit, almost like there's a sheer filter over top of it or something. It was okay. The mattes were only decent. They blended okay, but they could take a little bit of time to build up, and sometimes they got a little patchy. It was workable, but it wasn't revolutionary. And the shimmers were just not really it. They were very, I don't know, lackluster is just kind of the word that I keep wanting to go to for this time period of makeup. The shimmers just, they weren't punchy. They were very, just okay. I was a little sad that I ended up getting this one. Like I definitely used it and I was appreciative of the gift and I was happy I had it in my collection, but I was just disappointed that it wasn't what I'd hoped it would be. The Pastel Goth palette, people still want this palette, but it doesn't exist anymore. I'm pretty sure I was working when this one released, and I worked in the mall at the time. I was doing hair at a corporate salon, and I had a little break and I walked down to Sephora and I swatched it just out of curiosity, and I fell in love with it, but I didn't buy it right then, but I went back the next day and I did buy it. This was my first pastel palette. I really enjoyed it. Like this one, the mattes actually built up for me at the time. Obviously I can't speak on it now and it doesn't exist anyways. But the mattes built up nice for me. I felt like the colors were really fun. I liked that they could build up to be a little more intense. I remember that at the time that this one came out, there was a lot of people kind of criticizing it for not being a true like pale pastel, but I always liked this because you were able to do a little bit more with it, and I liked that there was a little bit more richness to it while it was still kind of those pastel vibes. I don't know if that makes sense. I did end up decluttering this one though, because once I got the Creepy Cute palette from Shroud Cosmetics and I bought that one, I fell in love with it and I was like, this is the end all be all of pastel palettes. I do not need my Pastel Goth anymore. And honestly, I've never looked back. Creepy Cute is still my favorite pastel palette. It's in my top 10 favorite palettes of all time. Gotten so much use out of it. The only thing that one's missing that the Pastel Goth has really for me is a yellow, but I have a million yellows, so it's fine. Let's go over Lorac, and then I think we'll probably end this video because I've already been talking for a million years. So again, I can do more parts to the series if you're interested. Oh my gosh, the Lorac Mega Pro 3. Oh my goodness, what a throwback. This was another one. I got off work at my salon in the mall. I walked my butt to Ulta, which was the complete opposite direction of my apartment. Like, I went way out of my way. I mean, it's not that far, but if you're going the opposite direction just to have to go all the way back to go home, it was a good amount of walking. I walked to Ulta and I bought it on release day. I was so pumped for this palette. I thought this was so iconic, so cool. I thought that I would use this every day of my life. I wouldn't need anything else ever again. And to be fair, I did get a lot of use out of this one. I used this one for a very long time and I really, really, really liked it. But eventually I did realize this is very large for the amount of repetitive shades. This isn't really my thing anymore. It's very basic. The one pop of pink is killing me right now. I did love it at the time. I thought it was very cool, but it's only okay. Oh, I skipped one, the Lorac Mega Pro 2. Obviously, I must have purchased this one before the 3. I literally don't remember this one. I remembered the 3, but I don't remember this one. It's fine. It's like, again, a lot of very repetitive shades with a couple pops of color. Like there's a green, a purple, a blue. Wow, a lot of these shadows just look white next to each other. I don't remember this one. I honestly can't even tell you my thoughts on it. Maybe I loved this one more than the 3, but I feel like in my mind, I remember loving the 3 more than the 2. Maybe I loved them both equally. I don't remember this one. You know, I might have videos on my channel with these, but this could have been even before I was making YouTube videos. I'm actually pretty certain I got these before I was making YouTube videos. Yeah, I do not remember this one, so I guess that's a good place to end it. So yeah, I actually even have still like quite a few more from this particular declutter video that I could talk about. Like there's a whole slew of Morphe palettes. I have a crown brush, some Juvia's Place and Violet Voss, and then I have like other years of declutter videos. So let me know if you'd like me to continue this series, because I think this was kind of fun, like reminiscing on memory lane. Moral of the story is so far I don't regret any of these declutters. If anything, I regret buying some of them in the first place because they had no place in my life. I'd love to know what you thought about this video. I would love to know what you think about the palettes I talked about today. Do you have any palettes that you decluttered a very long time ago that you regret? Or do you look back on it and just like have fond, happy memories? I would love to chat down below. If you made it to the end of this video, why don't you leave me an emoji that you used to use that you don't use anymore? For me, it's the little cat faces, like the hard eyes cat and the smiley face cat. I used to use those all the time and I don't use them anymore. And I feel like that's a fitting theme for this video. If you liked it, you can give it a thumbs up. That helps my channel out a lot. And if you're not already, you can follow me on my socials. Join the battybean fam. I love chatting and hanging out with you. I post every day on Instagram and I'm fairly active on Twitter and TikTok as well. And you can also subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. I post quite frequently. I post at least 4 to 6 times a week and I would love to have you. Thank you so much for watching and I will catch you in the next one. Okay, bye.